President-elect Trump, a little while ago today, seemed to take issue with the fact that American flags will be flown at half-mast at the time of his inauguration, considering the passing of former President Jimmy Carter. Is there any potential for that to not be the case? Is that a decision
say that one more time?
That the White House was
Say that one more time.
The flags are due to be flown at half-mast at the time of the inauguration, and President Trump seems to be taking issue with that. Is that a decision that the White House would consider reversing or reevaluating?
No.
Trump's narcissism, his contempt for the institutions of our country, lack of respect for public officials who dare to disagree with him or just do something he doesn't like, was on display with his latest social media post about former President Jimmy Carter, widely respected and considered to be one of the most honest and decent presidents we've ever had, never mind having gone on to do the most brilliant and started the most brilliant programs, frankly, while he was president and after he was president. But no, Donald Trump is upset because something about the timing of former President Jimmy Carter's passing will affect him. My name is Dina Doll with the MeidasTouch Network. Let's break this down.
Old Trump's having a hissy fit about the flags flying half-staff during his inauguration. This old Texas Paul, hope your coffee's as good as mine. Hell, I hope it's better. No, we're not happy about the flags flying half-staff. We aren't. That means that we lost a good and decent American. Someone that we could all be proud of. A good and decent man. Those are two things you will never be, Donald Trump. And no matter what they tell you to your face, there ain't nobody out there that's going to give a damn whether them flags fly half-mast or not when you die. So no. We're not happy about the flags flying half-staff. We just knew that you're a petty little bastard and it would tear your ass up. And that makes us happy.
So as we know, because there's been quite a bit of posts on social media, the flag would be flown at half-mast on Trump's inauguration because of the timing of President Jimmy Carter's death. President Jimmy Carter died under the Biden administration, thankfully, so Biden can eulogize Carter. So he will oversee the funeral of President Jimmy Carter. Perhaps Jimmy Carter's last great act or timing, because frankly, I'm sure he didn't want Trump to oversee his funeral, especially considering all the work Jimmy Carter did around the world to ensure fair and free elections. So having somebody like Trump, who still does not recognize that he lost the 2020 election, oversee his funeral may have been a step too far, or it was just a coincidence. But either way, because of the timing of it, the funeral will be on January 9th, and the 30 days from his death will mean that on the inauguration, the flag will be flown at half-mast. And a lot of Democrats who don't like Donald Trump recognize that. And we're posting on social media about how fitting that is, because we are all in a state of mourning by the fact that we have to endure 4 more years of Trump, his racism, all of his awful promises. So it seems like a very fitting way of starting his term. Well, so because this affects him, his ego, he's decided to post about it. He says, "The Democrats are all giddy about our magnificent American flag potentially being at half-mast during my inauguration. They think it's so great and are so happy about it because in actuality, they don't love our country. They only think about themselves." That's like quite a statement coming from Trump, the most narcissistic president, certainly, and perhaps the most narcissistic person I've ever heard of, certainly the most narcissistic president we've ever had. Then look at what they've done to our once great America over the past 4 years. It's a total mess. If you want to say promoting the CHIP Act, the Infrastructure Act, standing for union rights and actually bringing us out of the COVID pandemic without a recession, which pretty much every economist thought was impossible, a total mess, okay, then I'm worried about your perspective. In any event, because of the death of President Jimmy Carter, the flag may, if you notice, he's got potentials in this post. He says the flag may, and in the very beginning of the post, he says that also potentially. He's saying potentially in my flag, and he's saying it may. For the first time, so he says the flag may, for the first time ever during an inauguration of a future president, be at half-mast. Nobody wants to see this. I think he really means he doesn't want to see this, and no American can be happy about it. Let's see how it plays out. Make America great again. Okay, first of all, I don't know if any American was happy about the fact that President Jimmy Carter died. I think they just like the fact that this is something Trump, kind of couldn't control. But in that post, it seems like he's setting everybody up for changing the rule. He says that it may be flown at half-mast and that it potentially be flown at half-mast. So I think that he plans on disregarding yet another basic tradition in our country, and respecting a former president's. Jimmy Carter was the epitome of a public servant, putting his peanut farm into trust when he became president. He, put solar panels on the roof. He started the Department of Education. He tried for days and days, and more than a year, to release the hostages in Iran. He put that forefront of his administration, even though it ended up backfiring against him. Even though somebody from the Ronald Reagan campaign traveled to Iran and told them not to release the hostages until after the election, because they wanted Jimmy Carter to lose. That person ended up admitting that that happened. Perhaps the first kind of MAGA movement or MAGA moment started with Ronald Reagan, started with that act. Talk about an interference in our elections. But Jimmy Carter, the epitome of a public servant, denying him the respect of having the flag be flown at half-mast for 30 days. Trump seems to be queuing up the idea of not having it be flown at half-mast. And why? Because he wants the honor of having that flag flown all the way to the top for him. And it's always about him. The reason why he's so unpredictable is because whether or not he's going to make a trade deal here or stop a war there isn't because of any principle or policy. It's because how does it affect him? And how it affects him changes. It frankly changes. It changes based on his business interests. It changes based on how complimentary that country is to him in the press. And here, he doesn't want his inauguration day spoiled by the fact of us honoring the most decent man who, after being president, after his election interference by Ronald Reagan, perhaps denying him the presidency, and going on and building homes for people, even into his advanced age and 90, after a hip fracture, going out and still building homes for people, because he said in his life, he felt like the question he always had to ask was, what can I do to help humanity? How can I help humanity?
What I find extraordinary about Jimmy Carter, though, is that millions of people all around the world, all over the world, feel they lost a friend as well, even though they never met him. And that's because Jimmy Carter lived a life measured not by words, but by his deeds. Just look at his life's work. He worked to eradicate disease, not just at home, but around the world. He forged peace, advanced civil rights, human rights, promoted free and fair elections around the world. He built housing for the homeless with his own hands. And his compassion and moral clarity lifted people up and changed lives and saved lives all over the globe. Jimmy Carter was just as courageous in his battle against cancer as he was in everything in his life.
I mean, personally, I'm a huge Jimmy Carter fan. My father, who came to this country as an immigrant, got his PhD here in this country and worked under the Carter administration in the Department of Health that did such good things before Ronald Reagan came in and gutted the Department of Health. And my father was also involved in local politics to try to uplift his immigrant community. And I got a chance to meet First Lady Rosalynn Carter, this huge moment of awe for me as a child, and continued on my track in my father's legacy of trying to help my communities, continue to talk about politics, and here we're all together on MeidasTouch trying to uplift our communities. I mean, that was who Jimmy Carter was. He was this brilliant, decent man, and it's exact opposite of Trump. He didn't want to release his taxes, so he didn't release his taxes. It didn't matter if every other president did it. And apparently it seems that he's so bothered about the fact that we need to respect Jimmy Carter, and that us Democrats who are all grieving his term liked the idea of the grief of Jimmy Carter aligning with the grief of reelecting Trump. He's so bothered by this. He looks like he is already sowing the idea that it shouldn't happen because there's some of us who want the grief of Jimmy Carter to align with our grief. He's already sowing the idea of it not being flown at half-mast because for no other reason than his own ego.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.